now. So welcome everybody. Thanks for taking time out of your day to join us for this career conversation with Holly from Portland Trail Blazers, who I will let introduce herself in a moment. First, I am Shannon Anichetti. I use she, her pronouns, and I work with Mohr Career Services, which is the College of Business Career Services for business students. Mohr Career Services has a variety of ways that we support business students, virtual appointments, phone appointments, workshops, events, and webinars like this one. We also have some online support, Handshake, BMOC, Big Interview are a few of the things that we have. We're actually gonna pop in the chat some ways that you can connect with us. But for those listening in who can't see the chat, just to learn more about all of our resources, you can visit our website at business.uoregon.edu/career, and that will help you find some more. So before we get started, just a few logistical things. I know we still have folks popping in. Like I said, your mics and your video have been turned off and will remain turned off for the session because it is being recorded. Please do use the chat function if you have any technical issues. My colleague earlier, as I mentioned, Amy, is on kind of the back end helping with all of the tech functions. So please message her if you have any of those. For any questions for Holly during our session, feel free to message me. You can also just message everybody and I'll follow along, but use the chat function to put your questions in Q&A for Holly, and I will get to those as we go. The conversation is going to be about 30 minutes long, so it's going to be quick, and we're not going to get to everything that we need to go over. For other questions that you might have for Holly, or things that might not be covered, she does invite you to connect with her on LinkedIn, and I'll let her talk more about that in a moment. And with that, Holly, I would love for you just to introduce yourself to everybody.
All right. Hi, everyone. I am Holli Hanson. I am a corporate communications coordinator with the Portland Trail Blazers. I went to Oregon from 2013 to 2017 and was a double major in business and public relations. While at Oregon, I was also involved in Allen Hall PR. I was in the Chi Omega sorority. I was an editor for Envision magazine, and I was a part of Order of Omega. And then finally, I was an employee with the Student Recreation Center. With the Portland Trail Blazers, I'm in corporate communications department, and my team and I really handle the media and public relations efforts for the corporate side of the business. So that's leadership, executives, our esports league, Blazer 5 Gaming, our broadcasting team, and then we also handle the venue itself. So Rose Quarter Commons, Moda Center, and Veterans Memorial Coliseum.
Thank you, Holly. I appreciate that intro. So we're just going to get started. We actually have a ton of questions already from the audience, but I am going to open with our first question, which is, can you just tell us a little more about your career journey and how you got to where you are?
Yeah. So I started at Oregon as just a business major, and then I was going to graduate really early. So I added on a PR major, and it ended up being something that I was actually pretty interested in because writing was something that I was good at and also interested in. So while in college, I did 2 internships. One was a digital marketing internship with a company, and I was remote out of LA. And that one I worked with just one client, and I handled their social media and blog posts and website. And we worked with the company called Pelican, which is similar to Yeti. And then I was also an intern for a lifestyle public relations agency in LA, and we did like nail salons, hair salons, that kind of thing. I was in Allen Hall Public Relations, like I mentioned, and the client that I was assigned to with my group was Constellation Brands, which you probably don't know Constellation Brands, but it's the parent company of Corona and Svedka. I did PR and social media for Envision magazine, like I mentioned, which is a student-led environmental magazine. And then after college, after graduation, I had an internship lined up for a law firm, and I was in the marketing department for that one. And then I stayed there for about 6 months and was offered full-time there and ended up taking a position with an agency in business-to-business technology called Brand Definition in Portland, and I was the lead for a few clients, security management software, so like video software, business-to-business, audio networking, and then OTT technology. So after that, I did that for about a year and a few months, and I just decided that business-to-business technology wasn't really my thing. I wasn't interested in it, so a position opened up with the Trailblazers, and I applied and ended up getting it.
Thank you, Holly. I appreciate that overview. And I'm guessing a lot of folks maybe did the research before coming, because we have a ton of questions coming in. So I'm just going to kind of get started and flow with really what you kind of went off. So let's see, where might I want to start? Let me look at some good ones. Okay, this is maybe a good one because it kind of goes off of like you talking about your career journey. In what ways did business classes at U of O, like OBA, prepare you for your role with the Blazers or any other career endeavors that you have?
That's a really good question, because not too much from the business school classes itself translated over into PR, but some of the things that were pretty big was like me being a double major and then also working and being in a few clubs. Time was at the minimum for me. So time management was definitely a big thing that I had to essentially perfect in college. When I was in college, I made it so that from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., I'm an employee. So whether that's working or doing homework or like studying or being in class or whatever, so 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 12 hours a day, that's my time to not have fun. And then between the other hours, that was my opportunity to be able to do other things, whether that be, go out or watch a movie or whatever. And then can you repeat the question again? I had something else to say.
Yeah, for sure. Let me scroll back to it real quick.
Oh, okay, I remember. The main thing actually that I did learn from the business school was from Professor Connor Henderson. And his big thing was no matter what job you get and whatever offer you get, ask for 10% more for your salary.
Such a good tip. Such a good tip. Okay, now I'm just gonna try and like go with the flow of who asked first. So we're gonna kind of get right into it here. What is something that you look for in a teammate?
So my manager's actually on here, and so she's probably laughing about this, but something that she and I work really well together is that we're both very communicative. Whether it's something little or something big, we're like pretty much talking to each other all day. So especially being in communications, I think that communicating with the people around you is really important.
That makes a lot of sense for the role that you're in, which this next question might also veer off of that. What's one exciting aspect of working in publicity?
In public relations or with the organization? Sorry.
They said publicity. That was the question. Yeah.
Well, being with the organization, you obviously have the allure of being able to work with, Damian Lillard, or getting to work at the concerts they go through. So like you get to be really close to some of your favorite artists. So that is something that's obviously really exciting. But I think that one of my favorite parts about it, honestly, is just that what you do is directly seen both by you and the public. So like I could set up a story that gets put into the Oregonian, and then that gets seen by however many people read the Oregonian. So your results are pretty open and in front of everyone. So that's kind of a nice thing.
Nice. And I feel like these questions are just building on each other, because the next question is actually about that process. So how does the actual process work for a press release? Who is involved at what level of the organization?
Yeah. A lot of the press releases, my colleague Hillary and I write, and then they just get passed up the chain. So for example, if we are writing a press release for, which we just did, I think it was last week or the week before, if we're writing a press release for our partner Fred Meyer and an initiative that we're doing with them, I'll get the information from Fred Meyer or the partnerships people that lead Fred Meyer, and that information gets sent to me. I put it into a press release format and writing, and then Hillary and I both approve each other's or read each other's writing. And then we pass that along to our senior vice president who leads us. So it's a team of three, our SVP, my manager, and myself. And so the three of us make sure to get eyes on pretty much every release that goes out. And then that then gets passed on to the partnerships people and the Fred Meyer people. So once we have their approval, or if they have any changes, we'll make the changes and send it back to them. But really it's just like it starts with writing and then approval, and then when we get approval we set the date and we get to distribute.
Nice. I think that actually answers the next question. So we're going to kind of veer away from a little bit of the process part and go a little bit back to like kind of career journey. So in your experience looking for jobs post graduation, how important has your specific choice of major been? That's the first part. I'll read the whole thing and we can come back if we need to. Will companies turn you away or excuse me, look down on your resume if your major isn't specific to what they do?
I personally don't know if people would turn you down. I know that there's the requirements of like, oh, if you're going into PR, it makes sense for you to have some sort of communications education or background at the very least. But for me, I was very focused on just marketing and public relations. So it made sense for me to have a marketing major and a public relations major. And so I don't think that I'm really the best person to answer that question, because my pathway was so direct from what I had studied and all professional experiences that I had previous to this job. So I know that there are people that did not study at all what they ended up doing, but I think that question would probably be better for them.
That's great. And for whoever asked that, we have lots of recorded videos that a lot of people will talk about that, how their major maybe wasn't exactly what they studied, but still got into that. So definitely check out our recorded videos and then visit us to learn more about what we know in the industry as well. Okay, shameless plug there. Next, how would you compare Slack to other work-based networking? Does Slack help or hinder your group's efficiency?
We love Slack. I want to make that explicitly clear. We love it. We implemented it about a year and a half ago. And so it was new to the organization and it's still new for some people. There's definitely like newcomers that come in, new employees. We give them a training on everything, but we started it with, I want to say back in May, and held trainings for all employees, and we had user manuals made for them for it. And then any questions, we created a channel within Slack, so any questions about the software itself can be put in there. It was really nice in the beginning because we did have a Slack representative inside that channel. So if myself or my colleagues that were handling the integration couldn't answer this question, the Slack representative was able to step in. But I think that it's really sped up the communication that we do have. And I think that it's also been a really good tool to use for any internal communication and announcements, whether that be coming from myself or the organization or like leadership within the organization. So we're big fans of Slack because it's pretty user intuitive and it's really quick and easy. And I hope that we continue to use it.
Nice, great. Slack should be on here. So you kind of answered this a little bit, but in case anything else comes to mind, what are some things you did in college to prepare yourself for post-graduation life?
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to the beginning when I was going through all the clubs and internships that I did. I definitely wanted to make sure that I had work experience in the fields that I was interested in and currently studying in. Outside of that, I also was able to study abroad twice. And so I think that that was a really great way for me to grow as an individual. Because, you know, you get put into a country where you don't speak English and then you really just have to navigate yourself around. So I think on a personal growth level, that was a really good thing for me. But I would definitely say volunteer and do as many internships that are in your field or not even in your field as you can. You can't really do anything wrong by going to get more experience.
Great tip. I love hearing that. Cool. For everybody watching, thank you. We have tons of questions coming in. Please feel free to pop them in. As I said in the beginning, we might not get to all of the questions just because of timing, but we invite you to connect with Holli on LinkedIn, which we'll share later. So this is a great question. What tips might you have for finding success in a male-dominated industry?
So at the agency that I was at before, it was a very male-dominated industry because it's business-to-business technology. So oftentimes when I would go into meetings with my clients, I'm the only female there. So I guess the advice that I would have is to be great in what you do and make it known that you're great in what you do. So always speak up when you have the answer or when you have the idea, and throwing out ideas even when it couldn't be, or when it's not the best idea, because it could then transition into something that could be great. So always speaking up, and then always, I guess, knowing your worth. Great tips. It goes back to that thing that you mentioned about Professor Henderson, 10% more, right? Yeah, always ask for 10% more. Same tip, that's great. Cool. So do you have any advice for writing a cover letter that stands out from others? In the PR world, I don't know if this is for a business student or a PR student, but I would say something that could stand out is if it's not just on a plain white sheet of paper with, black Times New Roman. I've created my resume and my cover letter on InDesign, and they matched. So at least then when someone sees it, they don't just see black and white. It's a little bit different. And then I think that when you look at the job description, pull out key things that you notice in the job description and various experiences, whether that be in school or professionally, that you've had that directly correlate to that requirement for the job. That's great. And I'm really glad you mentioned you don't know if this person's in PR or not, because that is the difference, right? It depends on what you're going into. And for PR, of course, that's a really important part, and maybe not other industries. So I appreciate you making that distinction for sure. And those keywords are so important, like relevance to the job. Exactly. And using the language. So important. Okay, next one. What is the most useful skill you learned in any of your professional roles? I wouldn't necessarily say that this was a skill that I learned, but I think that I kind of already had it. But something that was really important in our field currently is your ability to write, and then also your ability to talk to people. So relationship building is obviously pretty big in PR because you work with the same editors, or you want to work with an editor, and so you want to build a relationship with them. And so just being able to have natural person-to-person communication is really big. And then obviously in PR, when you're writing, you kind of have to have a natural flow of words to write. So I don't know if that's necessarily something that you can just learn in a class, but the ability to write naturally and well, and the ability to be personable. Yeah, it's probably one of those things that's both, right? You learn it a little bit in class, but then as you mentioned, outside experience becomes really important to kind of hone that and to get in the real time feel of what that it means. So that's great. Okay, next question. Do you collect consumer data to help inform your decisions regarding PR or media? If so, how do you use it? The one that immediately goes to my head, so we have an analytics team at the Trailblazers, so they will survey and they'll do all the data analysis and everything. So one thing that immediately comes to mind is a few years back, my colleague Hillary did a survey of the game day program that gets given out. So it's like a little pamphlet, and we would call it Rip City Magazine. And so we took the survey data from that and figured out ways to either make it better or modify it, or keep it the same if needed, just based on the results of what the fans were wanting. Nice, thank you. Some of these questions are really so in depth. I am impressed you're able to come up with stuff on the spot. Feels kind of like an interview, right? I know. Okay, so you had mentioned time management.
what else was your biggest challenge in undergrad for you?
I think that I had a big focus on having the perfect grades. I was really busy, and so I felt like I kind of worked myself to the bone in the sense that I needed to get the A's in the classes, and I also needed to be at this meeting or this shift for work. And so I think that I could have chilled back a little bit because grades, I personally have never been asked what my grades were in college in any interview that I've been in. So I would say maybe have less of a focus on that and more of a focus on the actual experience.
Great one, great one. Thank you. And I have another question on challenges. We'll just continue with that theme. But for folks watching, we have really only about 9 minutes left. So we're only going to have time for a few more questions, which probably means we're not going to get to all of them. So again, if your question wasn't answered, please do follow up with Holly, and we'll make sure to have a plug at the end. Okay, so on to the question. So what is the most challenging part of your job, and how do you get through challenging times?
Well, right now, obviously, has been pretty challenging given the current state of the world. There's constant stress as to whether like the season is going to continue for the Trailblazers, or whether next season is going to be with fans or without fans, or whether concerts are going to be able to come back. So a big challenge that we're facing right now, both myself and as an organization, is how are we going to be able to drive revenue to be able to maintain everyone's jobs. And like, obviously I'm thinking about my own here. So how is the organization going to be successful doing things virtually and digitally and like touch free to bring in enough revenue to keep everyone?
Yeah, that's real. And I appreciate that you said that, because it is real and what's happening right now. So thanks. Okay, last two questions, final two. I think I almost got to all of them, so it's great. So you had both marketing and PR roles. What did you like about each of them, and how were they different?
Mm-hmm. So the marketing roles that I had, I actually hadn't mentioned this. A lot of them were in experiential and event marketing. So I really enjoyed the events lifestyle. I worked on like Nike Women's Marathon, Run with Heart, Nike Run Club, Nike Cross Nationals. And so that was really exciting to me because, again, it's something that your product is seen directly in front of you. And so that was one of my favorite parts of the marketing side. And then with the PR side, again, it's really just being able to see your work and have it be right in front of you and in front of big crowds and everything.
Awesome, great. Okay, final question. I think this is a great one to wrap up with. What advice can you offer a student who is about to enter their senior year and would like to begin to prepare for their professional career now?
Yeah. I think that this advice could go to anyone, whether you're graduated or whether you're in college or not. And I've said this to pretty much every time that I've been asked this question. I think a lot of times that people are so focused on one industry that they want to work in and would turn down or not even look at any opportunities outside of that specific industry. And I think that sports itself is a really big one that people are like, I only want to work in sports, or I only want to work at Nike, or that kind of business, when you can't turn down any other opportunity that could eventually get you to where you want. And so I think I've said it before that you need to make sacrifices in the short term for your long-term goals. I personally wouldn't have been at the Trailblazers had I not worked in business-to-business technology. So you can't turn down or not focus on anything but sports if that's the industry that you want to be in.
Great advice. Yeah, it's really thinking about that first career post-grad as the first career. It's not the forever, it's not the always, but it's just a stepping stone to something more. So great message to end off of for sure. Well, thank you, Holly, so much. I really appreciate your time. Before we wrap up, any final words that you want to share with everybody who attended?
I think that Shannon's going to be sending out my LinkedIn and my email address if anyone wants to follow up with me. But yeah, feel free to connect or reach out to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Holly. And thank you everybody who attended. This was really great to have so many lively questions and to really get to engage with you all and Holly. This is recorded, so it will be up on our website and available to you. We also invite you again to visit us in Mohr Career Services as a business student to learn more about all of your opportunities. We also have another webinar next week, so it's our final one of the summer. And it's at 12:30 with a person from New Relic who does digital marketing. New Relic is a tech company that has bases in Portland and California, but all over the world. They also have a really amazing summer paid internship program that generally starts recruiting in September. So it's a great opportunity to learn about the company. And again, Holly, we appreciate you so much for taking the 30 minutes to be with us, and just really appreciate your time.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right. Bye, everybody.
Is it